Yes.
It was weird.
Yes, I was the one who negotiated the whole Shin thing with Mike, you know, the dean. I was the music go-between that got the studio, got
The
Sound
Sound Emporium.
Emporium and whatnot. So I was the one who taught, because there was a dynamic between his sons who were musicians.
Oh,
George's
So-
sons.
Yeah, George's sons. So I came in as the interpreter, you know, to bridge between the sons' aspirations for Sound Emporium and what George wanted to do, which is basically just give it to the school. So I was like the interim person negotiating
mediator.
between, the mediator.
The shuttle
between-
diplomacy
between Mr. Shin and his sons.
Well, we're thankful. Hey, you made it on time. That's great.
Yes.
Well, yes, I know you made it on time too, Evan. But Jolie was at a doctor's,
Oh,
so
okay.
they didn't know if they would be here in time.
It's true.
Actually, you guys
I'm glad you
I
made
was in
it.
Dom's office, so.
Now, we have some people in here who you might know, I don't know if you know Terry Watson?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that's his son.
Well, no, Terry used to work for me.
Yeah,
So that's
I
fantastic.
knew he did.
I texted him to see if he had a message he wanted me to deliver to you.
Yeah, he
Yes,
said,
text
"Where's
me.
my check?"
I'll keep you posted.
And
Still waiting to
then,
get paid.
I don't know if did you know Don Cook at all? Songwriter, producer?
Yeah.
That's his son.
Oh, great,
Carson.
fantastic, yeah, absolutely.
And then everybody else is
Yeah,
like,
I think I was, well,
probably wouldn't know their parents, but
yeah.
would.
Didn't your dad used to have an office at Sony Tree? Or
At where?
at Sony Tree or Sony ATV? Did he ever have one there?
I've no idea.
Good. Good.
He probably did.
I think he did,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember going back.
Come on in, Julia.
Yeah.
Okay, he's already met certain people, you know the
Yeah.
routine, we go around, say our name, what we're doing, where we're from, all that stuff, blood type, here we go, Julia.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm from Venezuela. I'm a songwriting major. I'm a senior here at Lipscomb.
Yeah.
And what was my blood type?
No.
Negative?
Is that
I didn't
the,
remember my
is that the
blood type.
donor, universal donor?
No, but I can only receive from other negatives.
Ooh,
Yeah, so if I'm dying, I need a specific.
you just don't need to die. And then Brennan is, you've already met,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
what are you doing here?
Senior production major from Nashville.
Come on in,
Great,
Casey.
great.
That's it.
Hey, Casey.
That's me.
You see, man.
What's your blood type?
I don't know.
Me neither.
Red.
Red. Evan?
I'm Evan Frazier. I'm a senior production major from Nebraska.
Okay.
I'm Aiden Watson. I'm a senior production major from Northern California.
Okay, where are you from in Northern California?
Eureka, so up like in the redwoods.
Oh, I know where, yeah. I was born in Gibbs City. So,
He did a deep dive on
Oh,
Yeah, I read a couple of your
Geography.
Substack
Yeah,
blogs.
I know all of Northern California very well.
All right, so good.
My name is Zarita. I'm from Montana, and I'm a songwriting major, senior.
Okay, great.
I'm Katie. I'm a junior songwriting major from Santa Clarita, California, so
Okay.
southern.
Yeah.
I'm Carson Cook. I'm a senior production major and
Yep,
I'm Jolie Wing. I'm a senior songwriting major from Michigan.
okay.
I'm Landon Caldwell, a senior production major from Ohio.
I'm Rachel, senior songwriting major from Montana.
Okay. And you're Casey, and you were a senior music
Citizen.
publishing
senior.
guru?
Senior citizen.
Just a senior, or just a senior?
Yeah, I just got on, I get all the discounts at the theaters now, right?
Fantastic. It only gets better.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, something else I wanted to.
So it's like a
So
little,
what-
few
what-
more songwriters than production, but
Right.
kind of half and half.
Kind of half and half-ish.
Yeah.
Also, this used to be Catalog 3.
Yeah,
Now
Okay.
it's called Prepare to Launch,
yeah, love it.
which is, still gathering, refining catalog, portfolio, all that
Right,
stuff is
yeah.
part of senior project. But we've kind of changed it. Casey and I have been doing this. You
Yeah,
spoke.
you guys told me about
Last
it.
year, was that last year or year before?
Yeah, last year.
Last year, I
Last year.
guess. We were at your house.
Yep.
And your lovely bride made cookies for
Yeah,
everybody.
she does that often.
When does she arrive with the?
No, she won't be coming today.
No, okay. I just want to say that I'm so glad. Is this recording? Can anybody?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is great. Thank you. I just want to say that I'm so glad that all of you are here, and I'm really glad that Charlie's here. You know, you wouldn't even be at this school if not for Charlie. You realize he started the commercial music degree and in songwriting and production, and we'd probably be stuck in some crazy academic basement space for a studio if it weren't for Charlie. He also negotiated that with the then president. He negotiated the gift of the Sound Emporium, the Shin Center for Entertainment and the Arts, and interesting, you weren't at this one.
Yeah.
I got handed this baton when they were actually
Yeah.
getting ready to
Yeah,
to
I didn't
build-
have anything to do with it.
build it
being
out,
built.
and the
Yeah.
whole basement was supposed to be entertainment and the
Yes,
arts.
exactly.
And the dean's suite was going to be in there. And
Oh,
anyway, I'm sitting there like Mike is late to the meeting.
Yeah.
Steve Taylor's not there, so I'm just sort of naked in this
Yeah.
meeting, not knowing what I'm doing. And President Larry looks at the plans, and this is how stuff happens at a university.
Yeah.
A lot of times, he looks at the plans. It's like, so what's this huge space? You know, the Commons and the Shin Center, that whole open area, that was going to be all like offices and faculty and stuff. He said, what is all that stuff in there? He said, that's going to be offices for the dean's suite and staff and all that, faculty. He said, okay, just erase all those walls. I want an open space where I can have events.
Yeah.
Which he also did upstairs.
Yeah.
And he also took that huge room that was going to be a classroom and made
Yeah.
it part of the
Yeah. That was very much
admissions.
that was a pattern of behavior.
Yeah, but he's also the leader. He also did
He's in charge.
he also did a lot of good things, and
Yeah.
one of the great things he did was starting the College of the Entertainment and the Arts with Mike
Yes,
Fernandez.
absolutely.
And then
Yeah.
Mike wisely brought in Steve Taylor, and they wisely asked Charlie for few years of his life, and which you gave sacrificially. And everybody that was in, I just want to context this, everybody that was in that first class that you recruited, and it was about 21 students, which is crazy. You start a program, you have 21 students, but it's because of him, and just he's got this, I don't know, he's got this web that he
Well,
draws,
learn from the best.
lures people into. But he basically, because there was no established faculty, he just taught every single class. I mean, everything. Songwriting, production, ensembles, I mean, you name it, he was doing everything, which, I don't know, may have had something to do why you got sick.
Well, I quickly started hiring people,
But everybody
Also,
that was in that
obviously.
first class said, oh man, that was the best
yeah.
year and a half, I think it was.
Well, you
like.
did get 110% of my attention.
Yes, right. So anyway, I always talk about, I was saying to somebody, Aiden or somebody earlier, that I think of Charlie as like a sort of a blend between Gandalf and Yoda. Because he's very wise. I got the opportunity when he first came to Nashville, Sparrow signed him, and I got the opportunity to produce a record on Charlie Peacock. Really, basically, I answered the phone, I
Oh, get
opened the
out
door.
of here.
No, really, he's one of those that producers, once in a while you'll get to work with somebody who just has the vision and all the ideas, and they play it all in. And Charlie, I felt more like the student than the mentor at that point. But anyway,
he's
he's
being very kind. He was my mentor.
But-
I can tell
But
you.
anyway, he's, hey, this cracked me up. We were meeting yesterday about this class. Come on in,
Come on in.
Katrina, this chair over here.
Yeah.
And you are?
I'm Katrina.
Hi Katrina, I'm Charlie.
Nice to meet you.
And
I'm a
you're-
worship arts major.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm from West Virginia, and I'm
Okay.
a senior.
And also an artist.
Yeah.
So, anyway, where was I? I was getting ready to say.
Aiden, you mentioned Aiden.
Oh, Aiden. Yeah. I said, so what do you think about the Prepare to Launch class? He said, I had to readjust my brain to it after being in catalog and portfolio where we're doing the process of making a record. Catalog 1 and 2. So I kind of tweaked my brain, but I really like it. But it's sort of like a bunch of old friends catching up. Which I thought we need to do a debrief of this class and make sure that we're doing the right thing. We're going to do that next week, talk about senior project, etc.
Yeah.
But it's also one of the joys is to bring in people who have been colleagues and friends for these many decades. And I consider Charlie and Andy dear friends, and really look up to them and all that they've brought to culture and music and community and all of that. They started the art house. I don't know if you know about the art house. He can tell you about that. But anyway, I'm kind of a big fan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm kind of a big fan.
Likewise.
So I think today, last time when we were at your house last year, I think it was great. Andy was there. Y'all kind of interactively told your story. And I think we spent about an hour on that. Maybe we'll spend a little less time than that today, because I think we have questions and stuff that they want to ask, questions that I want to ask. But what I would like to start with is let's see, Wet DM MSM, everything that doesn't matters so much. Yeah, I was like, what is that acronym? So why everything that doesn't matter matters so much? That's a recent book that he and Andy, his wife, wrote. There's a quote in there that says, you tell the story about Alfie and, I want to go to Brazil.
Yeah.
And this, anyway, I won't go into the story. Anyway, I want to go to Brazil. And you were like, why do you want to go to Brazil? And he said, of course.
That's where the statue is.
That's where the statue is. And you wrote, for us, it might be said that the whole of life is either moving in the direction of Jesus and the redemption on offer, or away from it. There's no in between. There's no standing still. You're going one direction or other. And I think I would just like, as a part of just telling story, I mean, a big part of your story is that process of becoming a Jesus follower. And, that story and kind of how that morphed your evolution in who you are and what you've done, et cetera. So maybe kind of start somewhere back there and catch us up.
Thank you. There's a music story in our family that's a very, very old story. Like, for example, my father was a working musician and then became an educator. So he left high school, went into the Air Force band, played in, like a marching parade type unit, played in a jazz ensemble, played in their concert ensemble, and they would tour around to other bases and other cities based on, this was sort of a little bit post-Korean War, and they were basically representatives of the armed forces, right? So he went there when he was 18, and that's how he became a working musician, right? Because he started putting in the sort of proverbial 10,000 hours, right? And also playing he's playing in interracial bands, which he wouldn't have had that experience in the sort of sawmill, Northern California sawmill town that he grew up in. And came back and decided that he wanted to go to school and become an educator. Well, he wanted the same exact thing for his son, because he felt like it was just too difficult, to the speculative part of not knowing where your next check is going to come from. And so being a father, he just was protective of his son, and he didn't know well enough really, you know, like how talented is my son? I mean, can he really compete? You know, do I have a kind of skewed view of his talents and gifts? And I think my dad decided to err on the side of me maybe not having enough, not enough juice to do what I wanted to do, which he didn't have any clue about, right? Because I wanted to be a recording artist and a songwriter and tour the world. You know, I mean, my heroes when I was in high school were either like R&B soul singers or the singer-songwriters of the era like J.D. Souther and James Taylor and Jackson Brown. And then the third dimension, which is what I got from my father, was the jazz piece. So my entire childhood, I worked 3 lanes, right, which was all black music, including, you know, the lane of jazz music, and then the singer-songwriter part. So, and some of that my dad trained me for. So I lived in a home where I would be trying to write out a lead sheet for one of my first songs, and I'd stumble on a rhythm pattern, right? And I'd stop my dad at the kitchen table, and he would show me, you know, how to hear the beats that were on the and, or the anticipatory beats, and how to write that out, right? Or he would show me, like, every time you hear this, it's a quarter note followed by an eighth note, right? Or it's 2 eighth notes followed by a 16th note, whatever it might be. And he started training my ear to hear the rhythm patterns so that I could just sit and write them out. So that was the benefit of having a musical dad. The downfall was that I was a super sensitive kid, and I quickly realized that I would never be good enough for him, you know. But what I didn't realize until I was like way in my 50s, you know, was that wasn't what was going on at all. My dad was actually giving me respect. He would, because I later did that, like I would do that with you, you know, or Brown did that with me to be found in his studio, right? Or if you were to be found in my studio. The fact that you walked across the threshold and were in the room, that gave you a certain amount of credibility. Mm-hmm. So when my dad was teaching me and I had a little tear coming down my eye, you know, I was in the room. See, I didn't realize that I was in the room.
That's good. And
that's why he treated me like an adult. He treated me like somebody who, like, are you serious about competing on the world stage? If you are, then this is how good you'll have to be. And so when I was a kid, I did not know that. I just thought he was really cranky, you know, and really had super high expectations. Well, then I get a little further down the road, I realize, oh, well, even his expectations aren't high enough, right?
Yeah.
Like once I start to interact with music publishers and record companies and take my first trips, I lived in Northern California, take my first trips to San Francisco or Los Angeles to meet music business people, I realized, oh my gosh, you know, you have to be so good. And not just good, but you have to be unique in order to stick out, right? There's like, in those days, you guys have a world where you compete with millions of people uploading millions of songs every day, right, to streaming platforms. And in my generation, at best, we competed with, if there were 40 major cities in America, let's just say there were 40 people in each one of those cities that were worthy of Columbia Records spending $250,000 on it. So in some ways, it was the same kind of competition. You had to stick out, right? But at least it did have some limits to it, right?
Yeah.
Because the entry to being able to even get a chance was to garner the attention of an older person who was already in the business, right? And they became your guide. There was no other way to enter. Unless your parents were wealthy and they could purchase you studio time and purchase the services of a producer, you would never even see the inside of a recording studio. Like, it just would never happen. There's no possibility of it without someone coming and getting you and saying, come with me, follow me. So with that background, like the music background, I was also raised into a family where my grandparents on my father's side were Christians, and my grandmother for sure on my mother's side was a Christian. And they did not have any sort of what I would call explicit faith language-wise. It was all the way that they lived, and particularly my grandmothers. My grandmothers really exemplified love. They exemplified sacrifice. They exemplified neighbor love. They lived their whole lives giving to people without ever getting paid for it. And also, a very, very important part of that background that has to do with even why I did the identity artistry class, because I realized through my grandparents that artists are best when they have a companion interest that informs what they do as songwriters or artists or producers. And so let me explain what that means. One of the ways that you become a successful producer is through you have to be a problem solver. And the other thing about it is you don't announce to everyone in the room that you know the answer to every question. And mostly you do, because you wouldn't get there if you didn't. And you don't announce that you not only know one answer, but you're floating 14 answers in front of your mind while the artist is still trying to figure out answer number one. So how does a person get to that place? Well, the way I figured it out is that's also part of this story, which is that my family is based in self-sufficiency through poverty. Okay, so that means that as far back, I mean, not so far back as my grandparents and great-grandparents, they didn't go to the store to buy things. They went to a junk pile and they asked, what if? Do you understand what I mean by that? They went to an enormous pile of junk. They had a problem that needed to be solved, and they just dug around in it, and the entire time their imagination is saying, what if? What if that would work? What if this would work? What if I put that with that? What if I cut this in half and then added it to that? And then I can fix the gate, right? But they didn't go purchase stuff off the shelf. They were constantly inventing out of what already existed. Does that sound familiar to music?
Yeah.
Constantly inventing out of what already existed. Right? What already exists in music? Chord changes, scales, right? Rhythms, all of that. And yet somehow we are able to come up with new and different songs over and over again. All right? So those are the three basics, Brown. right? That kind of put my life together, is that I had people who pointed me to Jesus. I had people who pointed me to invention and innovation, right, at a very basic scale, who could never in their wildest dreams articulate some sort of artistic theology or philosophy, right? I mean, my great-grandfather said 3 words my entire lifetime. You know, everything was just a demonstration, right? It was reaching for something, a couple of grunts, put this with that, and the lesson is done. You've learned something, right? And it was up to you as the student of life to have big eyes, big ears, right? Because it wasn't like people were going to expend a whole lot of words like I'm doing right now, you know, trying to get these ideas across to you. It was very much a lived kind of philosophy and a lived theology, right? So fast forward, I leave school when I was 16, which of course you guys are here, so thank God. There's no chance of you doing that. That ship's already sailed. Did everybody over 16 here? Yeah. So yeah, I graduated from high school when I was a junior. I could not stay in school any longer. I should have been a homeschool kid, but that was way before its time. And so from there, I went to, started taking classes at a junior college, which then eventually my dad taught at. So I took another year from my dad at this college. And then by the time I was 18, I married my high school sweetheart, and we just took off, you know, to make the life that we dreamed of. And part of that was leaving where we grew up, which at that time I always thought living in a farm community was a place that you left. You know, like a lot of my observations about how much I learned from it are all in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was a kid, it was just a play, man, I gotta get out of this place, right? Because I'm like in there with my little radio in my bedroom, like tuning in everything that's happening in Berkeley and San Francisco, and I'm just like dreaming of this whole other world, you know? And then I'm looking out my window and there's a peach orchard, you know? And I wanted like everything that when I was reading back in those days, if I was reading Downbeat magazine or Rolling Stone magazine, which were big music magazines back in the day, I was reading them and devouring them. I couldn't memorize anything in algebra, but I could memorize an entire issue of Rolling Stone magazine like that, right? Because that's where everything that I wanted to do and be was contained. But once Andy and I got married, we had 7 incredibly difficult years, and finally at the age of 25 into 26, I started getting some help for pretty aggressive substance abuse problem that I had at the time. And we had 2 little kids, and I like to just say really simply that God sent me a saxophonist. I was a huge fan of John Coltrane, you know. Miles Davis is one of my major, musical mentors at a distance, and so all the players that played with Miles were all people that I studied and admired, and John Coltrane was certainly one of them. And for God to send me a saxophonist, I mean, it just was perfect, you know. And this guy was someone who had played on a lot of pop records already. He had come back to his hometown of Sacramento because he wanted to study to be a pastor. And this just caused so much grief for all the musicians in Northern California who knew Mike, because they were just like, gosh, what a waste. You know, this incredible musician has become this Jesus freak now. And it's like, well, that's the end of that. You know, well, I wouldn't say that I was following Christ at the time, but I would say that I did this kind of odd thing that has to do with my grandparents. I had taste tested so many different spiritualities that when it came time for me to pick a higher power in my 12-step recovery group, I picked the God of the Bible. So when I prayed, I would pray literally like this. I prayed 2 times a day. I prayed in the morning, I prayed at night. And I would pray in the morning and I would say, God of the Bible, so it's another day. I really don't want to use today. Help me to be a better father, better husband. Help me to continue to make music. And I hope that you'll send some people to help me. And all right, so that's it. So I'll talk to you later. And then at the end of the day, after not using or abusing substances during the day, having a good day, writing music or getting some work, then I would say thank you. Same thing. God of the Bible, well, here I am again. End of the day, thank you. And so that went on for about a year. And then I went up to, anybody been to Lake Tahoe ever? Do you know where that is? Okay, so you know the casinos and everything up there. So Harris Tahoe. So I was up there playing at a casino in the little room with this country artist, and so just playing piano, right? And we were there for 2 weeks, and John Denver and Jay Leno were in the big room. And you know who was there was all of Elvis's band. They were playing with John Denver then.
Wow.
And they had the TCB jackets they were wearing around the casino. You guys didn't even know what I'm talking about. There's this thing, TCB, which was Elvis's, their motto, which was taking care of business, right? TCB. And yeah, like James, the guitar player.
Oh, yeah.
You know, all those
Yeah, all
guys.
the guys.
Tut was
Yeah.
on drums.
Ronnie Tuck.
Yeah, so we all hung out for 2 weeks. It was a great couple of weeks. And but while I was gone, this saxophonist calls and leaves a message on my answering machine and says to call him. So I talked to my wife, Andy. She says, yeah, this guy, Mike Butera. I said, Mike Butera, the saxophonist? Yeah, he really wants to talk to you. So I come home, and I call Mike back. I say, hey, Mike, what's going on? He goes, I just, I don't want this to sound weird, but like every time that I pray, and I told you I'm a Christian. I said, yeah, I know you're a Christian. I heard you were. And he says, every time I pray, your name comes to my mind. And I really sense that God wants me to come to your house and pray with you. And I was like, wow. The bubble outside my head was like, that sounds really weird. And uncomfortable. And totally sketch. So, but I don't know, I just have he's a really nice guy. I mean, it's, so I just said, sure, why not? And I literally said to him, I mean, I pray in the morning, I pray at night, I guess I could pray in the afternoon. And so he comes over to my house, immediately, as you can imagine, right? So he comes to the house, and he's just basically, he says, so you told me you pray to the God of the Bible. What does that mean to you? And I told him a little bit of that, and he said, so let me see if I understand this. And then he'd speak it back to me, and I'd say, yeah, I mean, that's pretty accurate, right? And we hadn't talked very long, and he said, do you think you need a savior? I said, man, are you kidding? Like, and I probably even like used the F word or something. I probably said like, if somebody as effed up as me, definitely needs a savior. And he just looked right at me and he said, do you think that Jesus is that savior? And it still rocks me to this day. And I knew immediately, like, it was as clear as like the skies opened up. And I was like, yes. And that was it. Life was never the same from that point on. So it took, there was a lot of changes that had to happen in my life, but I was so fortunate to have good teachers right away, like people who brought me into Bible studies, and I got like slightly in the mix of, it would be kind of like today, like there's plenty of places, there are plenty sects, S-E-C-T-S, of Christian faith. There are plenty of places that you could go and you could get twisted up into a big mess, right? That would send you off for years. Maybe you have your core belief in Jesus, but you get enculturated in a whole bunch of other stuff that's unnecessary. Let's just say that. And for a moment, I kind of bumped into some of those folks, and a lot of it was, at that time, the issue, the main Christian cultural issue was that Jesus is coming back yesterday, so why bother, enrolling in the commercial music program at Lipscomb University? Follow me? Yes. So that was really the context that I became a Christian in. So I had people who were like, hey brother, can I get a word with you? And their word would be, you got to stop playing clubs, and you've had this issue with drugs and alcohol, and you're just opening the door for Satan, staying there, and you really need to become a music minister, of the gospel, and turn your life and your music over to Christ, because right now what you're doing is not right. And then another person would say, they would see me down at whatever club I was playing at, and they would be at the stage door and they would say, hey, are you Charlie Peacock? And I'd say, yes I am. And they'd say, well, we're Christians and we feel like the Lord wanted us to come here tonight and pray with you before you go on stage. Can we say a prayer for you? So that was the word. I was like, people were pulling on me, both sides. And the worst part of it was the saxophonist was one of them. And he was pulling me towards what in his mind was the most legitimate use of music, which was going to be some form of music ministry. So I was really torn. But thankfully, again, just like God sent that saxophonist at the right moment with the right word, God sent a whole other group of people who brought me a European and English, kind of a UK take on Christianity that was the intellectual piece that I needed. See, I really needed that. There were a lot of people who wanted to introduce me to an experiential piece, which I really didn't need any introduction to, because I had a sense of what transcendence in music already looked like. I knew that it could be there, even if it was a kind of a poor substitute, right? But I knew what it was like to be on stage with the best musicians in the world and to play for 30 minutes improvisationally and take the music to one new height after another, right? And keep going to the point where you did have something of a transcendent experience through music. So when people were trying to sell me like the ultimate expression of Christianity is experiential through these transcendent experiences, I was like, yeah, I think that's part of it. But I'm very interested, I mean, I have a lot of questions about the Bible. I have a lot of, I believe, but I'm still in the point with God help me with my unbelief, right? And so I needed to have some intellectuals who had really thought through all of this, right? I needed to be introduced to a long, long history, right? Not what some hippie on a beach came up with in 1968. I needed to get into this whole stream of Christian thought, right, over centuries. And so I found those people, and then from that point on, that's what gave me the ability to build a theology of music that set the tone for my entire life. If I'd have never met those people, I wouldn't have been able to help start this program, right? I wouldn't have had the buttressing, the foundation or any of that to do that. If it had just been, if everything was reduced to, do you know Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, right? If everything was as simple as that, there's no way that I would ever be able to build a philosophy or a theology of music. So how much did I do?
Man.
25 minutes?
That was actually 2:45 to 2:50. I took up 5 minutes. It's now 3:29.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's like under 40 minutes. That was awesome.
Good.
That's awesome. And so now you're a Christian musician. I'm
Yeah.
just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. He has a whole thing about.
Yeah.
Do you want to just briefly talk about that?
Sure. Of course I'm a Christian musician because I'm a Christian and I'm a musician, right? And we're in fellowship here with each other. We're in communication. We already kind of have an agreement, right? Even though we haven't stated it, right? Brown and Casey invited me here, right? You knew about it. They set it up, right? So it's not like we just bumped into each other on the street, right? So I can say, just like I just did, basically I told a story that said I'm a Christian and I'm a musician, right? So therefore you could say, yes, he's a Christian musician. But if you go and you write an article about me and you call me a Christian musician, I'm not going to be happy about it. Does anyone know why? It's context. This is one context. A magazine on the West Coast that goes out to X amount of people that we don't know who it is another context. Right? In the same way that there would be Christian context, right? That I would, if somebody just naturally says, yes, and we're so pleased to have Christian musician Charlie Peacock here, I may go, nah, wish you wouldn't have said that, but it's like, I love that person, I'm not gonna grieve over it. But it's more the idea of what does Christian musician mean once it leaves this room? And that's what I don't trust. I don't trust it at all. I have like zero trust in it. Especially today. Like literally today. Like in this hour, or as in the next hour occurs, I will have less and less trust. Because it does not mean what I want it to mean. And I should, if somebody's going to call me something or label me something, I should have some agency in it. When I have the power to. I recognize I don't in a lot of situations. But right now I do, right? So I can say that, But I know, and the reason why I try to keep some agency of it is so it doesn't just willy-nilly go out there and not make any sense, right? Because I don't want to be aligned with something that doesn't have its absolute, at its core, alignment with who Jesus is in terms of really simple things, like the Sermon on the Mount, right? About the summary of the law, right? Which is the love of God and neighbor, right? Jesus summarizes the entire law. You want to know what Jesus thinks about everything? He summarizes it, right? Love God and love your neighbor, right? Now we can make it way more complicated than that, can't we? And fill it in. But I have to have those basic things, right? So if somebody takes Charlie Peacock, Christian musician, and puts it into a Jesus mix, right, that doesn't have it, it's not front-loaded with those things. It could be front-loaded with politics, it could be front-loaded with monetization, it could be front-loaded with all kinds of things that I'm like, whoa, hey, let me speak for myself about that. Because I don't want anyone giving a testimony about Jesus, you know, that's supposed to, in a sense, come from my mouth that isn't coming from my mouth. That's irresponsible. You know, that's how serious I take it. So it's not like I don't want to be called a Christian musician. To me, it's a massive spiritual responsibility to maintain how people perceive you and what they're calling you, in as much as it's in your power to do so. That's my qualification.
There was a time when maybe you released a jazz album, and some people would say, "Oh,
Yeah, and that's a great example of it. I mean, I get this all the time. It's like, hey, so when are you going to put out a Christian album again? What? What do they mean by that? You know exactly what they mean. They mean Christian as genre. In reality, if from that moment that I described to you, when that saxophonist asked me that question, every music that I made from that point on was Christian music. From that point on, I guarantee you, I prayed to only make music that would glorify God. You know, like that was my entire mission. It's always been my entire mission. I don't know that I've succeeded in it. And that's up for God to decide, but that's always been my mission from the very beginning. But if people say, when are you going to start making Christian music again? They're not talking about the things I'm talking about right now, are they? Not at all. And they don't even care. That's what's so heartbreaking to me, is that they just want what you're doing to align with what their very small vision is for the music made by God's people. So let's just for a minute, can I give you just a definition of what Christian music really is?
yeah.
Christian music is all the music made by Christians everywhere in the world, in everything, since the beginning of Christ forward. Now, how big is that? Do we teach that here at Lipscomb?
It's big.
No.
It's big.
And as wonderful a job as these guys are doing to teach as much diversity as they possibly can, are we teaching the entire canon, you know, of music made by Christians in every country, every spot in the world over the last 2,000 years? You see, we're not, right? Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
Right? Which is what the idea of saying, when are you going to start making Christian music again? Do you see how absurd that is? It's completely based on a genre of music that's about identifying Christians, bringing the music to them so that they can either enjoy it, download it, purchase it, whatever it is, use it in their Christian fellowship, all of those things. I'm not saying those things are bad. I think I've often had trouble articulating this for some people because they jump immediately onto like, oh, you're a threat to me. It's like, no, I'm not a threat to anybody. I'm just a dumb little guy that you know, I'm just trying to do my best, right? So I'm not a threat to anybody. But I do want people to understand that when we talk about Christian music, and believe me, I've been right in the gut of it, haven't I, Casey? Right? I've been right in the gut of it with Brown. I mean, I get it, right? But I know that's not the fullest and most accurate expression of what God has done through music in the history of the world. Good night. No, it never will be, right? So you try to be as faithful as you can, and I don't know what that'll look like in your world, right? For me, what it's looked like is that my calling has been very simply to be God's musical person everywhere and in everything as much as God enables. That's it. That's my entire calling.
Say it again.
To be God's musical person everywhere and in everything in as much as God enables. That's it.
That's awesome.
So what does that open the world up to? Like, I can join you, right? And we can, write a worship song together, right? That maybe I can take to my fellowship and share with brothers and sisters there, right? Okay. That means I can get with my friend bassist John Patitucci, and we can improvise together, and I can release music that is jazz improvisational music, right? John and I are both Christians, very explicit in our profession, right? But when it comes out and you look at it on Spotify, or Apple, it's going to say that it's jazz, and that's just another convenience. I think for John and I, we would both say, well, it's kind of jazz, but it's improvisational music that's born out of all of our different influences, right? So even that, even like when you land on these tags, they're just approximations. They're not the thing itself. And same thing, we could go around the room. I could find a way to collaborate with each of you and have it find another lane, right?
Right.
Like, it might be folk Americana, it might be, top 40 pop, Sabrina Carpenter type stuff, or whatever it might be. But, yeah. And that's my calling, and why is that? It's like, remember my story again. I was raised by a musician father, right? Remember me talking about walking through the kitchen and writing out rhythm patterns, right? Okay, so I'm not a kid who picked up a guitar and learned to strum E, A, B, okay? I come from a different background. I actually come from, more of a university kind of background, even though I'm an autodidact, but I was raised by a father who was trained at university. And so that whole kind of, methodology, is in me, which has allowed me to, I would say today that I can make any kind of American music with the exception of things like Screamo and, any sort of, never mind. There might be some fans of things like that. Although I love Polyphia, if you guys know that band, if you're familiar with them. So, yeah, if I was going to do some sort of metalish American thing, that would be more it. Yeah.
I just think that's a really important definition, because honestly, the context here is almost, Katie writes overtly spiritual lyrics. Zarita wants to do music about Jesus and rock and roll. Katrina's in a worship arts kind of lane, but most people, like, the last thing they want to do is CCM here. And I find that really encouraging. Nothing wrong with CCM, but I find that exciting that they're looking for expressions. And
Yeah.
but I think the question then what's the foundation of that as a person of faith? You know, what's okay, what's not okay? How does faith inform art?
Yeah.
You know, where's the, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good discussion point.
Could we, at this point, I'd really like to hear what your questions are related to what he's saying, so,
Mhm.
because it's so deep and broad and powerful. And I know from some of your, just speaking with some of you as well as some of your questions, that this is something you're contemplating. How does that work? So what do you got for Charlie?
Hey, Brennan, your second you actually had two questions. I love the first one. When is the song done? That's a great question
Yeah.
for
I
a
put
producer.
that on like every assignment because I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you can address that. But your second question,
Yeah, let me,
you want me to read it?
no, I got that.
You got it?
You kind of touched on it, a little bit. Okay. For those of us who are making overtly Christian music,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to be like, okay, yeah, God likes this.
Yeah.
What does God want from us when we're not doing that? You're talking about, hey, I prayed to Jesus. I said, Lord, help me to make music that glorifies you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And you feel like you've done that.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like how have you done that? How do you get there?
Yeah.
Love that.
There's a quote by me that floats around the internet, and I don't know if I can remember it. It's not just about creativity. It's not just about creativity. It's about the person you're becoming while you're creating.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
It's not
Okay.
just about
Not
creativity.
It's about the person you're becoming while you're creating. So I would say that's part of the answer. Okay, is that like if we said, for example, God is a God of excellence, right? Which is one stream of thought, how you enter into this, right?
Yeah.
Historically. So we say, okay, God is relational and creational, and we look at creation and we see this magnificence, right? We see this enormous amount of detail, interdependence, all kinds of things that we can extrapolate outward into art, right? Very easily, right? There's an analog, in other words. God's made the analog. Look at everything that God has made, and that tells you about the kind of diversity of things that you can make. It also tells you a very, very important thing, is that God's creation is three things. It's useful, and it's beautiful, and it's baffling. Okay, so those three things it mostly is. We could bust it into, subcategories, but take, for example, who's from Eureka? Okay, Eureka man. Tell me your first name again.
Aiden.
Aiden from Eureka, you know about something that I absolutely love because from where you're from, right? So tell people about how big redwood trees are.
Oh my gosh. So. Well, it's one of those things where it's like, genuinely, like, if I laid on the floor, I'm like 6'5". Some of them are wider than that, and they are
Oh, twice as much.
twice as wide. And like every single tree I've ever seen in Tennessee looks like a bush in comparison to how big they are.
Right.
It's insane.
Okay, so they're majestic.
Mm-hmm.
They're majestic. They show us a part of creation that's truly stunning, isn't it? When the first time that you see trees of that size, right, in groves, it's overpowering.
And like the
It's
fact that the
overpowering.
root system works the way it does
Yeah.
too,
Oh yeah.
where it's shallow and wide, so they're far
Preach
apart
it.
from each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and that's what keeps them from falling over.
They
Is the fact that their root
they
system-
interlock with one.
Interlocked, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. So now,
God's lessons everywhere, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's talk about another thing. For any kid who ever grew up in California, and you're going to build a deck on your family home, you know, and you've got the whole family out there working on it. There's only one premium wood that you're going to choose over and above everything else, unless you get one of these new synthetic kind of woods. And what is that, Aiden?
It's redwood.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the illustration is complete. This is what God does. The most beautiful and the most useful. But never has to just be one or both, right? It can stand there, we can never cut it down. In fact, there's many that you can't cut down,
Yeah,
right?
it's old growth.
They're protected, all right? So it can stand there and we can just look at it and we proclaim beauty over it. And then we use the same exact creation and we call it useful. Right? So that's the answer, right? You can make something, and if at the end of the day you say, God, as much as I understand this, I'm totally open to being corrected at some point down the line, but as much as I understand this, I really think this thing that I made is beautiful and good, and I hope it is. End of story. You can also say exactly that same thing, and you can say, and I really pray that in your infinite wisdom, you will find ways for it to be useful. And then you can go another step. You could say, third addition to it is to say, useful for fill in the blank, right? Useful to the jazz community, useful to the neoclassical community, useful to the Christian worship community, right? But you never, ever have to feel any guilt for not stringing the sort of, the trajectory along. You can stop at beauty and goodness because it doesn't need an apology. Needs no apologetic. Why? Because it is. God created it. God created you, and God created you to be a maker after his pattern of making. And that's enough. Anybody who tells you that's not enough has another agenda for you. But again, there's no problem at all for you ever saying, but I would love for it to be useful, and so you can start to define how beauty connects to useful. Like I've made things that are just weird for no other person, no other reason than the listener will say, is this good? Is this legitimate? Is this useful to me? Yeah, I kind of like it. I mean, it's not like everything I've heard before, and why would I do that? Like, what would be the good motivation for doing that? It's actually one that artists are supposed to have. But what is the good motivation for that? Anybody know? Do you know anything about John Coltrane? Anybody here, jazz fans, saxophonists? I'm just looking for some way to give an illustration. Okay, who's your favorite virtuoso guitarist? Anybody have one? Who's that?
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Okay.
Is he virtuoso?
In the blues, most definitely. Yeah. Okay. Trying to think of what's a good illustration for you. Who do you think is the most skilled pop artist? Like songwriter, all around. I mean skills. I don't mean somebody who just has hits. I'm talking about somebody who's really skilled. Or a producer. Any ideas?
My first thought is like Jacob Collier, because I guess he's kind of pop nowadays.
Yeah, okay. Jacob Collier is a perfect example. Okay. So the point is, it's like Jacob Collier has made a career on what? Two things, apart from his crazy clothes. He has done things that other young artists haven't done, right? So he's not, by the way, he's not an inventor though. Okay, he's an innovator. He's basically borrowing from a whole bunch of other things that have already happened. We don't need to get into that, but he is in your generation someone who sticks out as having perhaps more excellence than others. Can we agree on that?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
And so in the process of it, like when you hear him do these complicated things, like when he's setting up the looper right, and he's like, and he starts getting these minor seconds, and he just keeps stacking and stacking. He's got all these consonant and dissonant pieces, right? And he pulls it all together, and then he plays, it gets a little loop going on the keyboard, and then he comes in and he does the next thing, and then he starts like a, soprano pedal point thing on his keyboard here. And everything is making sense, right? And he's doing a thing, and you may likely be saying to yourself, I can't do that yet, okay? What he's doing is he's pointing to the future for you, right? And that's one of the functions of art, and it's a part of the answer to your question. It's why it gets to just stay at beauty, or stay at good, or stay at exciting, or stay at mind-blowing, okay? Or stay at inspiring, or stay at majestic. It gets to stay right there because it does something to you, doesn't it? It points to the future of the human race. Points to what it means to care for the world, for the stewardship of the world, the stewardship of the music. The reason why I brought up John Coltrane earlier, because in my generation, he took 2 years to write one song called Giant Steps, which is one of the most classic jazz compositions ever. But really all the composition is just sort of one round of an exercise he created for himself. And the thing about the exercise is anybody play like wind instruments in here? Okay, all right, so one of the main things about wind instruments is like, if you're a keyboard player and you write out for a wind instrument, right, and you haven't studied arranging yet, and you're just like, hey, it's on my piano, it must be on the wind instrument, right? So you're writing out all these notes. And then you hand out the charts to people, and depending on what they play, maybe they're a clarinet player, and they'll go, that note's not on the instrument. Anybody ever heard that? Right? Or I can't finger that. That's too difficult to finger it at that speed, right? Well, what Coltrane did was he took everyone's complaints and that's too difficult to finger on the instrument. No one can play that, right? And he practiced for 2 years on this one thing and changed the entire scope of the instrument from every day forward until a guy named Michael Brecker picked it up and took it to the next level. Another person in the last 50 years who's done that is Jaco Pastorius on bass. There's bass before Jaco Pastorius, and then there's bass after him, right? Well, we can go through a whole bunch of people who have done that. If it's Christopher Parkany on nylon string classical guitar, there's sort of that. There was Segovia, and there was him, and there's somebody else today, right? But there's always somebody who just makes something that's good, that sends the signal to the rest of the world of what's possible. So that's a long answer, but hopefully it's important enough that you can see, because you really need that freedom. You don't want to leave school without that freedom, right? And so I'll tie that to what I call, or what the scriptures call, the glorious freedom of the children of God. That's where Jesus meets up with that. Cool. Anybody else?
Yeah, who else?
A song is done when it's on Spotify. And if it's not,
It's not
it's
done.
not, it's just done when you think it is.
It's great.
I
What
mean,
was the famous industry quote is it's not final till it's vinyl.
yeah, I mean, that was the generation, like when I released my very first record, I was so disappointed because in my mind, it wasn't one song that was done on it, but it was just time to be done,
Yeah, yeah.
you know? That was it. This
Good.
release schedule said it
Or,
was time
or,
to be done.
you know, with my books, perhaps your book,
Yeah.
this is as good as I know to make it today.
Yeah,
You know?
It also says, there's a quote in that, why everything that
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
matter
it, yeah.
book. You said you write, I think it was in that book, you said you write in order to know what you know.
yes,
That's interesting,
yeah,
and I think true, but.
yeah.
you
Well,
just
no,
talked about
this
that.
doesn't work for everybody, you know, because some of you are more verbal than you are, than writing kind of speaks for you. I mean, we're all different kind of communicators, and some more image oriented. But for me and my wife, we just happen to both be the same way, is that we don't write as much as like, hey, we know a bunch of things and now we're going to write about them. Like I love to discover myself, like what a song is becoming and what it's about. You know, I might have kind of an idea for it, or as Brown was saying, like writing. Like I write every day, so I'm writing either music or I'm working. I'm studying. A lot of my writing is studying. That's why that works with what Brown said. Is to write to know what you know. Okay, so this is the idea of how we know what we know is epistemology. All right, that's the study of knowing, and how we know what we know is incredibly diverse. It runs the gamut from our friendship circles to how we process the information of the world. But ultimately, it's about having an interest in literacy. And most of you will have a definition of literacy as the ability to read and write, okay? Which is only a starting point for a definition of literacy. Actually, what literacy is the ability to read and write and then process, okay? To find something in what you've read or what you've written that can be extrapolated, you know what I mean by that? Taken out of and put into something else. Okay, extrapolated out from that and put into something else. Just like the junk pile, right? You're taking from that pile and using it to make something else. So when I say I write to know what I know, there's this whole concept, if you want to study it, look up a guy named Michael Polanyi, and the concept is called tacit knowing, okay? How many people know how to ride a bike in here? Pretty much everyone knows how to ride a bike, okay. If you had to explain how to ride a bike using physics, it might take you a couple of weeks to study it, figure it all out, right? To really incorporate your own individual ways that you ride a bike, but all the physics of it, right? And write it in a paper that's understandable, right? But if you were to just try to tell a friend how to ride a bike, you could do it in a functional way, right? And get them on a bike and help them. All of that stuff that you know that isn't that superficial stuff is called tacit knowledge. Remember in reading a chart where it says tacit on it? Anybody ever read a chart and say tacit, right? Okay, so this is like the hidden knowledge that's underneath all your superficial stuff. And so writing and studying helps you get at the knowledge that you know that you can't articulate yet. So I would say, like, a lot of things for me, the ability to talk about the arts and talk about music from a philosophical or a theological place is just discovering intuitions, right, that could be decades old, but I'm just not ready to articulate them until now, while I'm studying and I'm writing. So that concept of writing to know completely applies to all you songwriters. One of the things when I was producing all the time, for many decades, working with artists, I would have them, there would always be a point where, you know, sort of like the dreaded second verse or this dreaded third verse, or whatever it might be. Some of them are struggling, and I'm like, you know, you really have to stop writing lyrics. You know, you are in such a rigid lyric writer space right now. So we have to remove you from that, right? You need to really stop writing lyrics. You know, it's like, please, I beg you, stop writing lyrics, right? Because it's getting in this space where you think you're writing this finished thing. It has all of the right syllables, it has all the poetics you dream of being, all the cleverness and brilliance you hope for, right? It's like, just stop. Just stop and just write. Like, what is it that you feel, that you think, that you really want to say? You know, oh, but that's so complicated. You know, I'm getting it, you know, and then I'm like, that's the point. That's the point, is you haven't discovered the tacit knowledge yet. That's why you can't write that second verse, is because you've got to get down in there and dig in some of that. And not call it a lyric, call it process. And then once you've gone through that process, then, like, I would show them, I'd sit there, I'd take their page, and I'd take my pencil, I'd put a box around that, I'd put a box around that, put a box around that, underline that, change a word here, hand it back to them, and I say, everything that I've marked is your second verse, now write it. And they'd be like, well, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to say. And I would say to them, yes, because you had to get out of this superficial knowledge, play around in the tacit knowledge for a minute, where you try to tell somebody all of the complicated, what it takes to ride a bicycle. Then you bring it back out and you reinterpret that as a lyric. And now you've spoken the truth. You're not just fumbling around trying to be crafty anymore. And that's the way that you get to the heart of it.
Yeah.
You know, it makes me think of you know, people, I've heard different versions of this, but the art of simplifying is the hardest thing to get to.
Yeah.
But it's because you really have to go through this process.
Yes,
To discover
exactly.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's really
exactly.
kind of what makes it.
Exactly, and part of this is there's a massive cultural wave coming against you that is anti-complexity. Okay, because every impulse of society right now is to render everything down to its simplest sort of grunt, right? Like to take big, giant concepts and make them, you know, the size of a single word, you know, in a tweet or a post, right? Kind of sign and symbol. And I'm not against that. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying you can't lose complexity either, because it's just as much as a tool as the ability to articulate something simply in the beginning.
Can I pivot from here to a question at least 3 or 4 of you asked, and it's kind of relevant here because it's related to social media. And an example of what you're talking about, I follow Substack. I'm a Substack guy, and they have feeds, and I'll scroll through that, and I've just read 50 one-liners that are all deeply meaningful and powerful.
Yeah.
But I'm numb.
Yeah.
I haven't caught anything. I haven't captured
Yeah.
anything along the way. But there's a bigger question, and maybe some of you can articulate around your questions around social media, because I think several of them mentioned how you've kind of pulled away from social media. They've recognized that. But so what does that mean to you? But there also other question is creatives are feeling compelled to be in social media to build their profile
Platform.
and brand
Yeah.
as a creative. So anybody else want to add to that question? Please.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've seen like friends of mine just push so hard into the social media space. People who are just beautifully talented, who just burn themselves out before they even really begin. And
Yeah.
so a big thing for me is like, is this even a good landscape for us to be in?
I can't even imagine it. To me, the work of becoming a halfway decent artist, producer, songwriter is so great and so demanding. I can't even imagine what it's like to feel the pressure that you have to be a marketing giant, at the same time. I'm happy to give you my opinions on it, as long as you realize when I talk about this space, I'm definitely, I'm not, maybe some other things I've said today are me hoping to be persuasive, and maybe talking about social media is just me more giving an opinion. I'm not trying to persuade you in any way, but I really, unless you're using it, for your group of friends, and it's really beneficial to what it means to love and care for each other or stay in touch, I would get off of it. I would say this is our generation, and we're going to be in control of our own generation, and we're not going to live our lives bowing to the already, billionaire techno bros who own all these companies, who really what they want is our attention, they want our data, and they want us to monetize our posts, because they're making it harder and harder for us to reach people. We'll be convinced that we need to monetize, and yet we still won't be able to reach people. When I started on social media, I had about 25,000 followers, and I could reach thousands of them in a post. If I were still on, say, Facebook or Instagram today, I could maybe reach 200. And so what's happened is that the corporations want to convince all of us, and this is not just music, it's book publishing, it's everything, that if we don't have a platform, we're not worthy of their investment in us. So again, if I were leading your generation, I would say something like, you know what? Kind of, what was the old country song? You can take this job and shove it. I would say something close to that, and just say like, no, we're not going to live by your rules. We're a new generation. We're going to make our own rules, and just watch and see what it's like, when we're in power and you don't own us. I'd literally be that bold. Because there's really so little to be gained by it. I see incredibly talented people who aren't, social media is not helping them break their music, It just isn't. We can talk about how to be in a position to get noticed, is a different question. But I don't see social media as being the core answer to it anymore, especially not paying them any money to boost posts or any of that kind of thing. If you just happen to fall into some, organic kind of stickiness on them for a time, write it out, but I guarantee it won't last because the algorithm is being tweaked all the time and it only loves one thing, right? It only has one ideology, and that is to use you. Now, if you can use it for a brief time, like I did, like I said, there was a time when, years ago, when I could post, and that would mean like I could literally go straight from that to the, singer-songwriter charts on Apple and see like I posted 2 hours ago, and I've gone from number 45 to number 5. Right? There's a direct correlation, right? I don't think that correlation exists anymore. It may, the only way that it may exist is for what I would call sort of the elites, the 1%ers or the 5%ers, that for their own good, the algorithm is rigged in favor of, let's say, 5 million subscribers up or something, right? So that they keep all those superstars kind of in the loop. But as far as you guys starting out, I wouldn't use it. I think there's plenty of other options for you. I'm just really not seeing it. And I do a call every week with my book agent, and he has all of these New York publishers, and everybody comes on and talks, and lots of Seth Godin, like I was on a call with him the other day, and he's just basically calling BS on the whole thing. And this is a guy who's amplified stuff at major levels through social media.
Yeah, he's the digital marketing
Yeah.
guru for many years.
And it's the game is so rigged. It's just, I wouldn't, again, stay on it if it benefits you, with your friendship tribes and all of that, if it boosts care of one another. Like my wife she's still on Instagram and Facebook, but she has a closed account. So she has like her 250 people or whatever that, right? And they talk to each other. But for me, there was no reason for me to be on there other than to keep up with people's birthdays, But for me, it was like, if I have 25,000 people who have elected to be on there and I can only talk to 200 of them at a time, that doesn't make any sense.
So what would your advice be to an artist who wants to find enough ears to be an artist?
Yeah. I just did a consult with the largest, I signed an NDA, so I'm just going to kind of ghost this a little bit, but it's with the largest chat, kind of AI chat, right? And I was recommended to them to do it, and I was like, some of the people involved with it, there's a guy named Peter Thiel that I'm not a big fan of. And but anyway, the bottom line was I decided to do it because I was kind of saw myself as like an investigative reporter, like I'd been invited into, behind the curtain, and I wanted to see what was going on there. Because I have done a lot of studying on AI music products, and so on and so forth. So I thought, okay, well, this is kind of going to be good for my education. So I it was me and like about 175 other people. And I was one of the few practitioners who didn't have a terminal degree, didn't have a PhD. And it was basically AI text, right, that spit out from prompts by this largest unnamed, AI, large language model. And what they wanted the consultants to do was to take, it would be novels, poems, lyrics, etc. So all of this machine learning, and then they wanted us to only do an A-B contrast, right? And then you could write 5 sentences of why you chose what you chose. So the prompt is like, write me a lyric about how my school is better than this school in the style of this rap artist, right, with no profanity. Okay. So then 2 lyrics would come down, right? And they were, I don't know why this pattern was always one was a lot longer than the other. But anyway, so 2 patterns. So then the consultant, right, the expert is supposed to tell them which lyric is better and then describe why you chose what is better. Okay, so I'm telling you this to illustrate that the biggest already bazillionaire companies in the world are, when it comes down to it, they've stolen everybody's stuff, right? And then whether it's a large language model or some music-oriented version, now they want human brains to come with their taste, aesthetic, and knowledge to come and tweak the system.
To train it further.
To train it further.
Right,
Okay? To take out what? The machiney kinds of things, all the tells, all the repetition of how it like, and we had this whole big, it was a special, proprietary program that nobody could get into that where everybody would post their gripes, right? And for some reason in the lyrics, like they kept using the word neon over and over. Like everything was neon. I don't know if that's true. Maybe everything is neon today. Maybe everything was neon.
It is.
Yeah. Whatever it was that when they stole all the lyrics to create all of this, they turned it neon. Okay, so the point in answering, trying to get to the point here is that having all the money in the world, stealing everything that everybody has, right? And then they're still hiring what they think is some cohort of the brightest minds in America to, critique all of this text. Okay? So what that should tell you is if you want to get ahead of what's coming, is that you use these God-given gifts that you have, that no large language model will ever have, right? To excel. I don't mean be average, So I am one of those people, like I am my dad's son, You can't be average. You do have to be one of the best. And what it will take to be one of the best, that's why these guys and all the rest of the instructors are here to help you. Be willing to have a ruthless, difficult conversation about what it means for you to grow and what you need to work on. Because those that will survive the next 10 years in the music business are going to be the ones that either provide a really incredibly solid artistic service, right? Like you really know what you're doing. That might be, maybe some of you end up, despite what your focus is now, you end up coming alongside people and having a service role in music that's just so important, so critical, right? But for those of you like say, I want to be a producer and I want to compete on the world stage. I want to be a songwriter, I want to compete on the world stage. I want to be an artist, I want to compete on the world stage. I want to serve the church with great artistry and love. You know, whatever it might be, it is going to take you, in a sense, the system is going to have to choose you, just like it chose those 175 people to look at what the large language models were spitting out. Do you follow that?
Mm-hmm.
Follow how, like, at the end of a line, what did they need?
People.
They needed people.
Yeah.
They needed a human who could say, people don't talk like that. People don't write lyrics like that. That's not a good lyric. It's a functional lyric. The thing that artists can do that machines can't do is that we can take a great lyric and show you how to make it better. Right? And not through just substitution of words, like if you were putting a document in Grammarly or something, right? Which I'm not, not dogging on Grammarly. I'm just saying there is no substitute for the artistic mind coming to bear upon a work that's in process. Because it is the mind that continually asks the question, what if? And then you run the experiment, don't you? You say, what if? You run the experiment. You write a little bit, right? You record something different. You go, that sucks. Then you do something different, right? And you're relentless. You are relentless. They talk about machine learning being relentless, being able to just work 24/7. Hey, no, the artist's mind is relentless. It will not stop until you can say it's good, right? If you can't say it's good, you're living in a state of frustration, aren't you? You're just like, oh gosh, I know I can get it better than this. I know it can be better. I know I can say this better, right? And that is powerful, So hang on to that. That's how your generation will become the next music business, But you've got to have your eye on excellence, and you've got to be humble to hear from people to say, like, look, you really got to work on this. This is a weak area, and this is what it's going to take to get better at it. And then the last thing I'll say about that is that simple things, particularly at university right now, that you might think, this is just such a pain in the neck. I wish I didn't have to take this class or something like that. You never know how one of those things is going to be, what's going to be used, that's going to tip you. Like if Brown and I are standing here and we're looking at a group of session musicians, right? It may be that because you took a class that helped you understand your personality, how you perceive your identity, and then you improved upon that, and you became a better co-worker and co-student, right? Well, we've both experienced working with artists who are sensitive, knowing that we had a drummer in mind who is going to nail this so perfectly, but we're not going to hire that drummer for this particular session because they overpower the session and they will make our artist feel insignificant. And so, even though we have two drummers exactly the same in ability, which one are we going to choose? See, it does that. That's what happens. You're equal, and then you're not. And the reason why we're going to choose this one is because that drummer is going to come in, do this as well as the other drummer, but is gonna make our artists feel like they're the greatest artists that ever arrived on the planet,
That's true.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what you have the opportunity to learn here now that gives you the advantage that other people out on the street don't know. You know, they just don't know it.
It's the people component, which, by the way, is a big reason we have the speakers come in to speak to you that we have, because we want, I mean, you convey it so beautifully. Dude, thank you.
You're welcome.
Our time is up. Our time is up, but we're not finished. Hey, can I get a picture with y'all with our guest?